It is Saturday, February 7th. Tomorrow is the Super Bowl between the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots, and the Seattle Seahawks are going to win. It's not going to even be close. I'm going to say that. But I want to tell you this. This is the first time in 20 years that I'm not attending the Super Bowl. Yes. And I am having a Super Bowl party for the first time in 20 years at my home tomorrow, but I won't be there, and I'm not disappointed. I'm trying to break old cycles. But anyhow, this is what we all have been waiting for. Root for your team, but I'm letting you know it's Seattle. So let me just tell you, let me welcome my guests, Bruce Fein, Tal O'Neill, Steve Laffey, all back in the house again. Welcome, gents. Thank you so much for joining us on this Super Bowl Eve Saturday. Look at all the guys. So let me say this. So the Trump administration has agreed to pull 700 ICE agents from Minneapolis, effectively immediately leaving around 2,000 agents. And so Tom Homan, who's Trump's border czar, he's back in control, cited a change in strategy towards collaboration with local police, and that's a good thing. A far cry from the original strategy, Tyler, Bruce, and Steve, which saw ICE agents all across Minneapolis arresting illegal immigrants without any assistance. And I must add, the killings of Renee Good and Alex Pretty may have played a factor as well. Most Americans seem to have been very uneasy with the killings and how the ICE agents conducted themselves. Not the majority of them, of course, but the few. Trump says that the new strategy will use a light of touch. What do you think, Bruce?
Well, I think that's very constructive. I think you need to underscore that the two humans that were killed were U.S. citizens. They weren't immigrants.
Does that matter?
Of course it matters. That is, if you have a standard that is so loose that the agents are not just focused, as they should be, on deporting illegal aliens, but they're after citizens, that's a real problem. That's you and me that could be targeted. I think the legal landscape, Armstrong, is very complicated. Under Supreme Court decisions called the anti-commandeering provision, the federal government can't force state governments or localities to cooperate on the enforcement of a federal immigration law, but they can opt to do that. I think what's constructive, I think where the consensus is that the ICE agents should be focused on the criminals. At least at present, it looks like the majority of those who are being deported and detained and questioned are not, have no criminal record. But surely I think we can get a consensus. That ought to be the focus. And that would mean, for example, of relaxing any of the tension that exists when ICE agents show up at courtrooms or at jails or prisons and want to deport those who have recently been released from the state system.
Tyler, what's fascinating to me about what Bruce is saying and others, it's easy to talk about ICE, but will this make a difference to the protesters that 700 ICE agents have been removed and that local law enforcement is now going to be working with ICE? Will the protesters behave better? Will they learn anything from this? Will they be peaceful protesters? Or they have been infiltrated so much more that they can continue to escalate because their agenda is not peace. Their agenda is to further divide, confuse these communities across this country.
Well, I appreciate the question, Armstrong, because I do want to push back on Bruce a little bit. Yes, these two people who unfortunately lost their lives were American citizens, but we have to look at the context in which they lost their lives. We have footage of Renee Good and Alex Pretty both getting very confrontational with immigration enforcement. And we have footage of Alex Pretty engaging in direct violence, damaging a law enforcement vehicle in anger as they're leaving the scene. Now, of course, there's a lot more context here that we need to get into, because why were Alex Pretty and Renee Good acting like this? Well, they're acting like that in the circumstance of anti-ICE agitators on the ground trying to block ICE from arresting people who let's make no bones about this. They broke federal immigration law, and our sovereignty as a country relies on our ability to say who can come here legally and illegally in this country.
So let me stop you there. So any person, American or illegal, who follows the patterns of Ms. Good and Mr. Preddy, if they exhibit the same kind of behavior, that ICE has a right for a kill shot, and they also have a right when they are surrounding one person, they remove the gun from him, and you got 6 or 7 ICE agents surrounding him, then they can just take out their gun and shoot him? Is that the standard you're advocating here today?
No.
Well, tell me the standard you advocate. I'm trying to figure out what you're saying. Yeah,
to be
clear
clear,
with this. Tell
I
us.
think both of these deaths were tragedies.
Okay.
But I do say that in the case of Renee Good, the situation is vastly more complicated. In the case of Alex Preddy, in both of those cases, we have people who were engaging with law enforcement. Now, I'm saying that in the context because you asked me, Armstrong, about these agitators, about the protesters, and I think it's very important for us to put everything in the context that what is happening.
Fair enough.
But I do think that in both of these cases, I mean, if it were up to me, if I were God, Renee Good and Alex Preddy would still be alive today.
So glad to hear that. Thank you.
I think, I don't like to see anyone lose their lives in a situation like that.
Let me add, if I can, Armstrong.
No.
I'm not disputing that.
I don't want you to add.
Okay.
I got to move on to Steve Laffey.
Okay.
So, Steve, what I'm about to talk about now is not something that's isolated, because as much as we talk about that, this, to me, is equally important. And what we're talking about now, these are patterns, and pretending otherwise is very dangerous and deadly. Let me tell you where I'm going. A Chinese surveillance balloon crossed U.S. airspace and was shot down over American waters. I'm calling the roll now. Chinese nationals have been charged for operating an illegal CCP-linked police station on U.S. soil, all true. A Chinese national in Michigan pled guilty, if you remember, Steve, smuggling a dangerous biological pathogen into our country. Federal prosecutors have detailed repeated cases of Chinese state-linked cyber intrusion, economic espionage, and theft of sensitive technology. And now, just this week, in Las Vegas, we see clandestine labs, unexplained biological materials, and research violations raising fresh biosecurity alarms. Now, let me just say this to all of you. This is not about the Chinese people. It is about the Chinese Communist Party and individuals who violate U.S. law, exploit openness, and endanger our public safety. Even the Federal Bureau of Investigation has been clear. The threat is CCP programs and policies, not ethnicities. So let me do a recap. Airspace breaches, cyber intrusions, research theft, biological smuggling, foreign policing operations. Each incident alone is serious, and together they form a warning. This is not hysteria, it is vigilance. Not propaganda, patterns. Not fear, facts. And if we choose to ignore those repeated incursions, we invite more. Steve Laffey.
Exactly, and it's much worse than that, because both people talked about regarding ICE and what happened in Minneapolis and what's happening with communist China is a lack of protocols, a lack of training, a lack of information to the United States of American public. So specifically on communist China, it's hard to say it's much worse than what you just said. 64,000 Chinese nationals have been apprehended coming over the border the last 4 years. 64,000? There's not just one giant balloon incident. There are more. There are 3 in the last year where they put balloons up over Florida, Texas, and another state, and the incursions by their military into our airspace has happened 1,000 times. So we can go on all day about this. Communist China is an enemy. And for the President of the United States to have a lackadaisical, Xi's a great leader stuff going on, first, they're going to ban all the students from coming to the United States of America, which I agree with. Then they backtrack on that. We go from tariffs that are basically nothing to 100% down to 30%. There's a lack of consistency in informing the American people about how dangerous this is, and that communist China wants to be the world supreme leader. They are behind most of the military now stuff going into Russia that's going to fight Ukraine. They are replacing Iran by far as the world's worst problem for peace. So we have to do something very consistently about communist China, which the president needs to do, and stop all this banter about like keeping TikTok open for an extra year illegally. All this stuff has to stop, and we have to focus because, and listen, John F. Kennedy wrote a book, Why England Slept. America's asleep when it comes to communist China. Even though we have some tariffs, we're totally asleep about the real danger that they pose in their economy, which can spend as much as they want on their military buildup.
They should not even be allowed to buy land and property here, considering what they're using it for. You know, Bruce, yeah, they should not be able to buy it. You know, Bruce, there's this key U.S.-Russia treaty which expires, ushering in an era without caps on nuclear weapons, without the New START treaty, which caps the number of deployed nuclear warheads at 1,550 on each side. There will be no limits on the U.S. and Russian arsenal. Shouldn't we be concerned?
Well, I don't believe the so-called limits, given the difficulty of verification, really made much difference anyway. And one thing that you may have omitted is the agreement does not cap anything that China is doing. They're outside. It's only United States and Russia. So we had an INF treaty. It lapsed. I don't know whether it made anything more dangerous. I think the idea that arms control treaties really constrain any country from doing what it wants is exaggerated and makes us less vigilant to just look at reality. One example, this treaty called the Kellogg-Briand Pact, it's almost 100 years old. It said you can't use war as an instrument of diplomacy. It's still intact, right? And of course it didn't have any impact at all. Japan invaded Manchuria, Italy was in Ethiopia, World War II erupted. So I think that the whole idea of these nuclear treaties is an illusion, and it gives an appearance that now we can rest on the agreement that these statistical limits on warheads delivery vehicles will be honored, and we don't need to worry. We need to worry all the time. They're just scraps of paper.
So when we come back, we got to get Tyler O'Neill in this conversation, see where we are with Iran, Israel, and the fact that the United States has built a huge presence there, and whether they have reached some kind of resolution between Iran and the president. The president tweeted out they did. We'll talk about it when we come back. I'm Armstrong Williams. You know, Tyler, before we go overseas, I got to tell you, the nation has really paused with the Guthrie family. I was so glad to hear the president, with just the perfect tone, he reached out to Savannah. Because listen, the disappearance of their mother is just a heartbreaking reminder that evil often arrives quietly without warning. And, you have these saying it's the son-in-law, there's this ransom note, and they're saying none of this is true. They have no leads. But what the moment does calls for, Tyler, is compassion, restraint, and vigilance, not speculation or spectacle, because if you heard her earlier in the week and her just sobbing, I mean, telling, can you imagine your mother or your father just disappear without a trace? Can you imagine the anguish that does? I mean, and that disappearance just leaves families suspended between hope and fear or cruelty no one deserves. I mean, how can you even sleep at night when your mother's out there and you have no idea, you're not hearing from her? And so our thoughts remain with the family, and our resolve must be to confront whatever this evil is with clarity, courage, and care. Tyler?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that whenever you're faced with a tragedy like this, or, God forbid, something worse, the number one thing that we all, as people, as fellow Americans, as human beings, should do is suffer with those who are suffering, and say, regardless of what has happened, say that our hearts go out to her, our hearts go out to the family, and we pray that they'll be able to find their mother soon, and we pray that, if there is any sort of evil here, that is confirmed, that law enforcement would be, just and swift with justice and finding and rescuing that poor mother.
Where are we? It seems as though the rhetoric and the drumbeat towards conflict has been lowered in the Middle East.
I hope so. I pray. I mean, the place we are at right now is Iran has fundamentally been weakened. President Trump, by working with Israel, that whole FAFO meme is so accurate when it comes to the situation in the Middle East in the last few years, because you had the horrific invasion of Israel on October 7th in the largest pogrom since the Holocaust, and then you had Israel. Israel had to respond, and this was a situation where Iran's proxy, which is Hamas here, invaded Israel, engaged in this atrocity, and grabbed prisoners and brought them back. And under President Trump's leadership, finally the hostages have been returned. But we saw Israel respond firmly as each of Iran's proxies got involved and aimed to attack Israel. We saw Israel knock out Hezbollah. We've seen a very strong response to the Houthis, which unfortunately remains a canker in the Middle East. We've also seen a very strong response to Hamas. And, of course, we had that operation that took out Iran's nuclear capabilities. Now, that's a temporary thing, and we all know that the Islamic Republic is not going to give up its nuclear program easily. So President Trump sees himself as a deal maker. And I think it was very telling when the U.S. helped Israel knock out that nuclear capability that Trump immediately said, all right, Iran, come make a deal. Trump doesn't want to force in on regime change if he doesn't have to.
Nor do we want him to, because that has never worked out for us if you look back at history. Bruce, Democrats in Congress are continuing to push back against a national voter ID requirement, which would require people to provide a government ID to prove their citizenship when they register to vote in federal elections. Now listen, the issue of voter ID has always been a very serious one for Democrats. In 24 states, you do not have to show an ID. The justification is a flimsy one. It is argued that somehow requiring an ID would suppress the vote or certain populations, namely Black Americans and Hispanics, and the poor and the elderly, because they don't have access to an ID or they have limited resources available to them to go to the DMV. Are you crazy? I mean, what kind of argument is this? Sounds crazy. And then a large number of Americans already do not vote regardless of whether they have an ID or not. So to say that someone who can't be bothered to take a few hours out of one day to go to the DMV and get a license or even figure out how to get one would decide to vote is absurd. Do you think we're crazy?
No, I think the Constitution clearly entrusts voter registration, voter eligibility to the states. The U.S. Supreme Court, in a case called Oregon and Mitchell, basically said if it's a federal election, the federal government come in and set specifications. If we look at the most recent election in 2024, they're not all the claims, although everything that you've described was intact, that there was all this fraud and there are illegal immigrants that are, or those who are not properly registered to vote are voting. Now, it may be that it's very little burden to acquire an ID, but it may be a solution in search of a problem that doesn't exist.
Let me get you beyond this legal speak. Are you telling me that people should not get a vote ID?
If there's
I'm
not
trying to
a
figure out what
problem,
you're saying.
No.
Everybody should get an ID, Bruce.
Well, then, if that's true, then the legislators need to enact an ID. We have been opposed to national ID cards, at least since Nazi Germany, when it's thought, you can use these ID cards for very, very dangerous things. In World War II, we used the census information about the Japanese Americans.
We're not in World War II, Bruce.
We're talking. The world changes.
Yeah, come on, Bruce. I mean, come on. What are you saying?
No, that you can abuse private information for nefarious reasons.
Are you saying blacks and Hispanics are being abused now?
I'm not. I'm saying that it can be abused.
But it's not, Bruce.
But
do you know exactly what the Democrats are doing here?
What are the problems that you're focusing on? Are you saying that there's widespread proof that there's all this illegal voting that is occurring in 2024?
I'm not. I'm simply saying, Steve Laffey, if you're going to vote in our federal elections, show an ID. It's just that simple.
So the state of Georgia settled all this. We don't have to go back and redo it. The state of Georgia put in a law, you had to have an ID. They come to your house if you did have one. The liberals said that no one would vote. It would repress voting. More people voted. Obviously, if you need an ID to get a library book, you should have an ID. When you vote, voting in each state, it's run by the states. It's not going to be nationalized, 15 states like President Trump has been talking about. But every state should have it not hooked up at all to the internet. Paper ballots. You go in, you put it in a box. The state troopers come by and they take the box and they put chains around it. And if you have to open it up again, you do. But in the meantime, to say that you don't want to have an ID to vote is preposterous. It doesn't pass the smell test of anything that goes out in America in 2026.
I mean, come on. No, it's okay, Bruce. It's okay. It's okay. So, Tyler, let me come back to something else. Why has Congress become so inept, so ineffective? These clowns, and I hate to talk like this because it's not my language, these clowns are talking about another government shutdown.
Yeah. So what we saw, this in Minneapolis, and, we still have to hear exactly what happened. I'm glad we're getting an investigation into the death of Alex Preddy, and they're looking at the death of Renee Good. We have to understand, though, the left has gone off the deep end on immigration. They're demonizing everything they can. And you see story after story after story where there are all these hyperbolic claims about ICE, arresting a 5-year-old. No, ICE didn't arrest the 5-year-old. What happened was the 5-year-old was with his illegal alien father, and ICE came to the illegal alien and he ran away, leaving the 5-year-old alone. And so time after time, we have these stories that are presenting ICE in the worst possible light. And I'm not saying ICE are angels, but I am saying they're trying to do a very difficult job. And so when it comes to this government shutdown, we've had Democrats deciding that this is the issue they want to, they want to go to the mat on. They're saying, we don't want to fund DHS. We don't want to fund this. And I think the American people understood in 2024 when we were dealing with an insane immigration crisis where millions and millions of people were crossing the border illegally, where President Biden was bringing in people via planes that were not legally allowed to come here under our congressional laws. We had a huge crisis, and President Trump came in saying he's going to deport these people, and we're going to return American sovereignty to the status where we have immigration laws that say when you come here and when you can't come here. And until those laws are changed by Congress, by a real bipartisan effort, we're going to enforce those laws. The left is having a conniption, and now they want to shut down the government over it.
So, Bruce, you're my brother.
Yeah.
So, the Supreme Court's ruling in California allowing their redistricting to go forward, it's a huge loss to the Grand Old Party.
Well,
it's very significant.
But they're doing, the Grand Old Party's doing the same thing in other states, like Texas.
That's what I want you to tell me. Yes.
Right?
So talk about the ruling. Yes.
So the gist of the ruling is either party, if they wish to, can redistrict for political gerrymandering purposes, before the 10-year census arrives. And the courts are not going to get involved. The court has said this is a political question. can aid Democrats in one state, Republicans in another state. But basically, the court's saying, we're out of this deal.
Yeah, we're out of this deal. So, Steve Laffey, how is the American economy? The stock market stunk up the place this past week. I mean, do you still smell it? Oh, it was stinking. It was so bad. But we cannot measure the stock market by the economy. So we know the two are just not the same. But Steve, go ahead in a minute and a half we have left.
The economy is strong as of today. There's a lot of reasons for that. Some of it's actually ending. But you bring up an unbelievable point that people don't talk about. I don't know if you knew what you were saying. One of the reasons the economy is strong is that the stock market is very high.
Yes.
And really wealthy people are spending money like crazy and employing people and so forth. If, however, that were to change, the stock market would have a 20% permanent, 30% correction, whatever that may be, and people felt less wealthy, you would see the economy not be strong. In fact, it would be weak. There's never been a time in my lifetime where the economy being strong, to just use a word, we had over 4% growth the last 2 quarters, it looks like, which is big, is based upon a lot on the stock market because it's so high. Now, you start to see things in the stock market about what's really happening with artificial intelligence, whose jobs it's taking, what's it doing in the software companies, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to continue, one sector after another. So, Armstrong, you just said it, by June, I think we could have a pretty weak economy, and here's the problem. America cannot afford a weak economy because tax receipts go down, the debt to GDP goes up, and we're going to have a higher real rates. Everybody, Scott Bessent, the president, everybody knows this. And so they're going to do everything they can to keep the stock market up because that's part of the economy, a bigger part than it ever used to be.
Let me just say this. If you want to send us, I get a lot of information at info@armstrongwilliams.com. Steve just said something. I want to ask you, are you feeling wealthy today? Are you feeling prosperous today? Answer that for me at info@armstrongwilliams.com. Are you feeling wealthy and prosperous today? Now, when we come back, we got to talk about the Super Bowl. We got to talk about sports gambling. We got my man Brad Fritzhand, researcher at Sinclair Broadcast in the house. And we got to talk, but again, I got to remind you, Seattle's going to win tomorrow, okay? We'll be back. They're going to win this. Oh, yeah. We'll be back.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence, there's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion. And that is, there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com.
Hold on, let me hear.
I'm not one who's braggadocious. I don't talk a lot of trash, I just don't. But I must tell you, I love sports. I wish they'd carry their conversation out of this room so I can hear. I love sports. That's right. So we're going to talk a little about sports gambling. We've got a Emmy award-winning broadcast journalist joining us. Is my guest there in the ready to go? But anyhow, while I get this together, let me just tell you, I've watched Seattle all season. And I actually thought, I think Seattle, in their first game of the season, let me figure out. Brett, who did Seattle lose to in the first game of the season? Was it Los Angeles or was it San Francisco?
I don't know. You have me stumped there.
Oh, that's good. I've got you stumped. How are you doing, Brett?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. So, and there's my other guys. They're getting them together. He's still moving around, so they'll get him there. So, Brad, talk about all the sports betting, the gambling surrounding this Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be big. They're projecting for this Super Bowl close to $2 billion legally.
Why is this a Super Bowl? Is it the Patriots?
In terms of why is the gambling so big?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think you get a large group of people who don't typically gamble will gamble on the Super Bowl, whether that's squares. I mean, legal sites are now doing the squares in the boxes that you would see at Super Bowl parties, so you could throw $20 in. You get recreational things.
You got to explain this in layman terms, so everyday people can understand this who don't necessarily gamble. So you got to speak to them. So go ahead.
Yeah, no. So if you were to go to a Super Bowl party, you would place a $20 square, you'd buy a bet. And a lot of people, the reason that you see such a rise in sports betting nowadays is it brings a sort of different, almost adrenaline to watching a game. A lot of times you're not interested, you don't really care on the outcome. So throwing a little bit of money whenever you have a financial incentive involved will definitely make you more involved in watching the game.
Lou Holder, my man, welcome to the broadcast. There you are. Thank you so much for joining us. What's different? Listen, I was at the Super Bowl in Arizona. I think it was about 11 years ago when Seattle played New England. And was it Marshawn Lynch who should have run the ball? Mm-hmm. They tossed the ball, and we know what happened. I don't think the game's going to be close, Lou. I don't. I think it's going to be a blowout.
Yeah. I think it's actually going to be close, and thanks so much for having me on. This is an amazing conversation, an amazing topic about this event. You know, it's become a cultural phenomenon in our country. It's more than just a sporting event. More people watch the Super Bowl for more things than just the game. But as far as the game, I actually think it's going to be a close one.
Listen, let me say, Lou, let me stick with you. How quickly has sports betting expanded since legalization, and what's driving that growth?
Oh, it's huge. I think now because, with everything from prop bets to, but first it was just the game, right? People were talking about the game and you had to be knowledgeable about the game to do betting. But now people are actually betting off of, okay, how long is the national anthem going to go, right? What color are the socks of the players? Like everything now is betting and gambling. So it's not just about the actual game. It's about other things, these prop bets and other ancillary things that people can bet on to try to make money and things of that nature. That's the reason why I think it's exploded the way it has.
So, Brad, I think Lou makes an excellent point here because, I have some knowledge of this. I'm sitting in the stands and somebody said, well, I made a bet. This is how many fumbles made. He's not ready for the big time. He's going to have this many fumbles. How many sacks this person is going to get? How many penalties? Who will get the first penalty? Who's going to score the first touchdown? All those little nuances people are betting on.
Yeah. Live betting, the term is micro betting or instant bets. That's in-play betting. So something that you could do now, we'll use tennis as a great example because it's a very fast-paced sport. You can bet not only on who's going to win the match or who's going to win a set, you can now bet on who's going to win a point, how many aces a person's going to have in a game, in a match. So they've made it so you can literally bet on every single outcome in every sporting event. There's nothing that you can't bet on, especially with the rise in prediction markets. It's reached the point where there is nothing that cannot be bet on in the country.
So Lou, who benefits financially from the sports betting explosion? Leagues, states, or the platform? Or maybe the individual?
I think everybody gets a piece of the pie, bro. I think that counties, they when you have these betting parlors, like here where I live in the Prince George's County, Maryland area, down at the MGM, where they have a place there where you can bet. Like, I think the county benefits, the individuals benefit, the establishment benefits, everybody benefits. Before, like when I was growing up, it was like Las Vegas and Atlantic City. Las Vegas and Atlantic City, right? And then, they had this place up in Connecticut called Foxwoods, but now it's like everywhere now you can actually have a betting experience, and now they put food around it. They want you to stay for a while, and right after the Super Bowl, the big one's coming up with this March Madness, and it's starting all over again, where you can bet on teams, you can bet on mascots, you can do all kinds of things, and I think everybody gets a big share of the pie. That's why it's big business. That's why it's being brought to so many areas, because there's enough money around in betting for everybody.
No, it's so true, because I've attended the Super Bowl, like I've said, for the last 20 years, and there are very few. Brad and I were at the French Open last year with Jan and Beverly, and we saw two of the greatest tennis matches ever. We saw Sabalenka and Coco Gauff, but yet we saw Alcaraz and Sinner, and that classic marathon at the French Open.
Probably one of the top 5 greatest matches ever played.
We were there at the French Open. So, but listen, they have turned this into an experience. I mean, this is what it has become. But Brad, what risk does widespread betting pose to consumers, especially younger audience who are not as sophisticated, naive, looking for quick riches, a quick hit? So
the issue now is that, like Lou said, it used to be, if you wanted to make a sports bet, there was 2 ways. You can go to a place like Las Vegas and legally do it, or you could do it through an illegal bookmaker. Now they made it so all you need to do is go to the App Store, download an app, and just deposit money with your bank, your credit card. And they made it so easy to do it that it's become so dangerous. And there's 2 truths to this. There's legalized gambling is definitely better than non-legal gambling, but there's also massive public health risks, because you have youth who can't control themselves. They get their paycheck, and the first thing they do, okay, I got $1,000, I'm gonna now go and try to make it into $2,000, $3,000. And what that ends up leading to is addiction and people in very deep holes just losing all their money and gambling it away.
Lou, you wanna add to that, a takeaway?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing with technology and cell phones, whatever. I mean, the explosion of how much it is accessible. There is a responsible way to do it, and people who are betting responsibly. But then there's people who, without controlling and stuff like that. And again, I see it with a lot of things in our society. Phones are the big one for me. Like, there used to be a time where, you shouldn't be texting and driving. Now you drive down the street and the police officers are texting and driving, So it's like, everything's out the bag now. There's so many people who are doing it. The lines are so blurred and everything's so relaxed that the answer to your question, what are the concerns? The concerns are, if we're not careful, we're going to let it take us places that we don't want to go. And I think we can actually say that we're there. Like, if we're not careful, people will pay, use their whole entire paychecks and do things that are, instead of paying their mortgage, they'll try to pay the lottery to see if they can, bid that one hit. It's like you always got to have a hit, and you're hitting again and you're hitting again, and it does become addictive. I think phones and all these other things is part of the addiction process that we have in our country and in our world and in our society, actually.
Well, then, Brad, do you think the current regulations are sufficient to prevent an addiction and this financial harm that you spoke of?
No, but I don't necessarily think it's the regulators' fault, because sports gambling has grown so rapidly. So if you're talking about who benefits, right? If you look at state tax revenue in 2021, just taking a random quarter, that was $190 million in total tax revenue. Now you fast forward to a quarter in 2025, it's close to $1 billion, over $900 million. So it's grown at such a rapid pace. It's come to a point where it's been passed to the states to decide if they're going to legalize sports betting in their state. So it made it so easy for people to gamble, and on top of that, you have the ads and all that, and the regulators have to keep up because they want to get a piece of that pie, like Lou said. They want to get that tax revenue, but you lead yourself down a hole where you are playing catch up. And these states haven't really caught up because of the growth, and now you can't turn on a television or a sports game without seeing a TV ad about gambling. And that's just the fact of it, and it's a dangerous precedent that's happening.
You know, this is a fascinating conversation for many of us who are watching and listening, because, you know, I play the stock market. I consider that to be gambling. I have so many of my family members play the stock market. You know, my sister played the stock market, and for 2 years, she was down thousands and thousands of dollars, but all of a sudden the stock recovered in this chaos and she got her money back. But my goodness, it was touch and go. You know, I play the horses. I just play Preakness. I do that. But so, you know, when I come back, I want to ask, is all gambling the same? Is it even more or less riskier, the kind of gambling that I'm describing, than what you're describing with the sports betting? Because all gambling comes with a risk. And all people can get the belief that, oh, I won here, I won big, so I'm gonna up the ante, I'm gonna put more in. You create this illusion, and sometimes you just have to walk away. And some people don't have the discipline to walk away. And the other thing is, 99% of the people don't win. There's only a fraction of the people that win at this. That's the other thing that we don't talk enough about. More of that with Lou and Brad when we come back. I'm Armstrong Williams.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
So, Lou, what are your thoughts on these prediction markets finding loopholes to allow 18-year-olds to gamble instead of being 21 years old? I mean, I'm just telling you, it's not even something we talk about with the prediction markets. Your thoughts?
I think for me, it's part of a bigger problem that, you know, you're looking at entities to kind of look out for the public, and they don't. I mean, it's almost like whatever it is that's going to make money, you know, our legal system and the people in government and the things who regulate certain things, if they know that there's money that's going to be made, I think that's the conscience sometimes goes out the window, right? And I just think that the gambling and the betting is one of those things that I think that sometimes governments put in place so that, you know, so they know that they can get some money from some source every single month or every single year. I also think it falls into the same realm for me as these speed light cameras. Like, you know, it's just they ding you, and they get, you know, you look at some of these speed light cameras and they're getting millions of dollars off of one speed light camera, right? Because they know that they're going to like either trap the public with this hidden, you know, speed light camera. I think gambling's the same thing. They know they're going to trap the public, but they're getting money. People are getting money, and they are sometimes relaxing the rules and not looking out for the younger, knowing that, you know, they're not really responsible at that age. But they're like, yeah, look, if we know we're going to get a certain amount of money per year for it, let's just put it in there. Let's just do it. And I think that's the relaxing of our society that has gotten to a place now where the ethics, the moral ethics now are in question when it comes to something like betting and gambling.
You know, I remember going to the Super Bowl 20 years ago. Tickets may have been something like $500, $700. Those tickets are $10,000, $8,000 each easily. I'm telling you. And listen, the Super Bowl is such a high-end event. The tailgating, buying the paraphernalia, going to the different super workshops. There's so much that's going on, but it's so enjoyable. And it puts you almost as if, like when you go in the casinos and you're gambling, everything is dark, so you have no concept what the time is, you have no concept of what time of day it is, and you're just spending money in this dark black hole. And they know exactly what they do. I'm telling you, Humans getting money out of you, they're better than the algorithms. They know exactly the patterns of behavior that make people spend that money, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The Super Bowl has become like almost a status symbol.
No. It has evolved from a championship game into a worldwide cultural event.
It's also 100% true. I mean, you look at television ads, right? You're talking $10 million for a TV ad this year. I mean, it's just outrageous. But the truth is, it's one of the only events where you can know you're going to get those guaranteed hundreds of millions of users. You have maybe the Oscars, which are going to get a lot of viewers, but the Super Bowl, you're going to get worldwide viewers, and they're going to be paying attention to the game, to the commercials, the halftime show. There's nothing people don't pay attention to.
I have never watched an ad on any Super Bowl where I've ever spent money. Ever. So, you know, what role did television advertising and media storytelling play in this transformation, Lou?
I mean, well, first you got to go to the brilliance of the NFL. I mean, the brand of the NFL has just been phenomenal. I mean, this is a sporting event that is now, like you said, come a cultural activity. And 3/4 of the people watching the Super Bowl are not watching for the game. They don't even know who's in the game. They're about the halftime show. They're about the commercials. They're about the prop bets that we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. They're about all this stuff that has nothing to do with the game. And so the NFL has been brilliant as far as getting these TV companies to pay for the rights to broadcast this. And then those TV companies have gone amazing as far as how the advertisers and even the look and feel of the games, all this is bringing in viewers. It's big business. It's big business. And like the commercials, the 10 million, I didn't know it was up to 10 million this year. I mean, that is a phenomenal and wild event, knowing that every 30 seconds that you're seeing a commercial that people are paying that amount of money, and they're getting it probably back with sales on the back end. So mass media and the power of it is huge. And this, outside of the Olympics and outside of the World Cup soccer event, the Super Bowl is the most watched TV program in our world every single year. It's gone global now in our world, outside the Olympics and outside of the World Cup every 4 years. That's it. That sporting event is it.
Wow. You know, why does the Super Bowl, Brad, attract viewers who don't regularly watch football? And how important are halftime shows that was mentioned and commercials to the event's success?
Yeah, I mean, like Lou said, a lot of people don't watch the Super Bowl for the game. I mean,
I didn't know that, by the way.
You go every year. That's the problem. Everyone who goes to the game.
That's a good point. Thank you.
They're there to watch the game.
I deserve that, right? Okay.
We don't got it like you.
No. Let me tell you, I love myself some Super Bowl. But go ahead, Brad.
But the truth is that people go. Everyone throws Super Bowl parties. I mean, everyone has a friend who's throwing a party this year, and everyone goes. They bring their wife. They bring their kids. No one knows really what's going on. Not everyone watches the game, but the ladies are always glued to the commercials when the game stops action, and the guys go and they get more food or more drinks. And then you have the halftime show, which, depending on who's performing, a lot of people just don't care to watch it, and a lot of people do care to watch it. I mean, people have their own perception of what the Super Bowl is and what they want it to be, and that's how they view it.
So let's we got Holder Sports here. We got Mr. Researcher here from Sinclair. You've got Howard Sturkholder here. Let's make our predictions before we get back into the weeds of this conversation. So I'm gonna start with you, Mr. Lou Holder. What's your prediction for this Super Bowl tomorrow?
So here's my prediction. I want the Seattle Seahawks to win the game for this reason and this reason only. That quarterback class that has Drake May, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix, they all are going to be compared to one another. And I don't want any quarterback getting a Super Bowl before Jaden Daniels here in Washington.
Oh, come on. Come on. But in your heart, who's going to win?
I don't want New England or Drake May getting a trophy at all. My prediction is Seattle.
Is that your heart? Do you think they're a better team?
I think that Seattle has some moxie and some power there, and I think that McDonald has done a phenomenal job with Seattle, and I think that Darnold is a huge story, and I think that Seattle's actually going to win this game.
Brad?
Yeah, I think Seattle's going to win too, for two reasons. One, I think their defense is superior. Defense wins championships, and some would say they might deserve to win after what happened years ago with Marshawn Lynch. But also, Sam Darnold is an amazing story because he was on the Jets, who, you know, a lot of times quarterbacks get drafted to the Jets and people think it's the end of their career, but you know, he wasn't very good on the Jets. People kind of just threw him off to the side, and then all of a sudden, here he is. He's putting up amazing numbers. He's in the Super Bowl. They're favorites to win, and yeah, I think they're going to win too, Seattle.
Well, let me tell you why I think they're going to win. New England's defense, I've watched them in the playoffs, and they could have easily have lost the games. They didn't really win any of their playoffs games. The other teams just lost. I mean, I'm just telling you. But here's the thing. New England's defense cannot stop Seattle. If you watch Seattle against San Francisco, they blew them out. If you watch them against Los Angeles, people said Los Angeles should have won the game. No matter what the Rams put up, Seattle always had an answer to it. They have something, there's something about them, and it's always been about them. And I'll never forget, as they were playing the game of the season when they were going to decide who was going to be the number one seed, San Francisco was playing at home. Seattle went up in their house and took it from them. Seattle is on a mission. I don't even think New England should be in the Super Bowl. I think Buffalo belonged in that Super Bowl. I don't think New England belongs there. It's a great story. It's a great story for Kraft and what he's been able to do with this organization. Jerry Jones should take lessons to stay out of management, to allow his coaches and personnel to run the team, because Jerry Jones could be sitting the same way Robert Kraft is today. It lets you show you what happens when you know your place as an owner, and you know the place, what you do, you empower your coaches. So listen, I don't even think that New England's defense has a chance of stopping Seattle. And I don't think the weather's going to be that great because that's a cold place there. I've been there. I was there some time ago when they played the Super Bowl in Santa Clara, California. That's a cold environment, I'm telling you. But it's still, I don't think, like you said, I think it's going to be a blowout. What's your score? Predict score. I think I've got a minute. What's your score?
And I think that the quarterback play is going to be huge in this. And I think Darnold, being a veteran, is just going to have more moxie than Drake May. I think that, Drake May is a great story, but Darnold, like you said, is a great story. I mean, he's going to be the first one out of that class of Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. He's the first one
let me just tell you this.
Super Bowl.
The game will be won by halftime by Seattle. They're going to put up so many points, it's going to be won by halftime. Look, Lou Holder Sports, I'm talking trash. And listen, I like New England. I do. But I'm with common sense. Brad, Lou, good job. Thank you, my earlier guest, for joining us. I'm Armstrong Williams, and I'm out of here.